Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Founders Chair podcast. Very pleased to have on the show today Andrew Dobby from the company Madebrave. Andrew, welcome to the Founders Chair.
Andy, nice to see you again.
After 11 years, the last time I interviewed you, it was live on radio, and now we're doing the post-COVID thing on Zoom.
Yeah, and I think we were just saying you look 10 years younger. I look 20 years older in 11 years. So well done to you.
Well, I'm excited to find out what's been going on in those 11 years and what's caused you to feel like you look a lot older. But you know, the reason we like to do these interviews is because we know that, you see on social media the overnight success and the growth and the greatness, but we don't always know what's going on underneath the bonnet.
Absolutely.
And we like so we're using this platform to hear people's stories and your entrepreneurial journey and the learnings and everything like that. So that's what I'm excited to hear. I'm excited to find out what's been happening in the last 11 years, but even from the start. So can we start, Andrew, if you can just tell us a little bit about you personally, where you're from, where you live, your family, what you get up to, if and when you're not at work, and then we'll go
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah, well, I've got a really interesting, weird start to life actually, and I've never usually been telling this story until recently. I usually started where I started my business, but the older I get, I've realised that's not your whole life, right? And we're all born of different things, and sometimes the way we're brought up, sometimes those stories are actually what form how you start a business or where that takes you in life. And I wasn't born Andrew Dobby. I was born with the name Stephen Jakes, and while I was in the womb, now this is quite dark for a second, but I'm cool with it. And
No, that's go ahead.
my birth mum, she took really mentally unwell while I was in the womb, and she tried to take both her life and my own while she was in the hospital, jumping out hospital window. And at 30 days old, I was born premature, and luckily, obviously, both survived. But I got adopted 30 days later to another family. So I went from being Stephen. The nurses didn't know my name at the time, so they called me Arthur because I was in a little hospital in Edinburgh that looked out to Arthur's Seat. So I went from Stephen to Arthur, and then I got given the name Andrew. And I got adopted into I was really lucky actually because I got adopted by my mum, Maureen, and with my brother and my sister, who are both from different families, and we're like a little collection of people called the Dobbies. And my adopted mum, she was deaf in both ears, so she had 3% hearing here, 7% hearing here, and so like she's like my ultimate hero, and she taught me so much in my life because you can imagine, right? If you can't hear and then bringing up three children, she did that on her own. My mum and dad split up when I was kind of primary three at school, I think. And she taught me loads about resilience. And it's only now, as I sort of hit 43 and I'm, having to deal with resilience, right, which we all have to do in business journeys at different points, is the reason I start to tell that story is because it actually brings a lot to life of how you get through business and a lot of that. And I feel a lot of the lessons I've learned through that and sharing those stories actually have made me who I am today. So yeah, I went deep there, but I think
Wow.
it's yeah.
When did I'm just curious, at what age were you told the story you just told me?
Yeah, so well, I always knew I was adopted since as young as my mum thought I could understand it. So I remember sitting on stairs at home beside her, and I had one picture of sort of my birth mum and birth dad, and I just always knew of it as a nice story, and it never felt weird because of that. So I think it was a really nice way that my mum did it. So it's why it's not weird for me now to talk about, and it's always felt totally normal. I suppose um, I didn't necessarily. Well, I suppose I didn't. I'd never, growing up, I had this family, and then I'd never seen someone that looked like me, And I always looked at my friends and went, "Oh, you look like your dad or your brother or your mum," and so I was always quite keen to reach out or to know more. And not everyone is, in this situation. Everyone's kind of different. And it was only when in my 20s, my birth mum had got better a little bit at one point, and she had reached out through the adoption agency, and I was able to I was there to make contact, and at that point, I learned I had a brother, and this is where this story gets super cool as well, right? Because I ended up had a brother, and his name is Ryan, and he's the founder of a business called Flavorly. And so just in my 30s, just as I was starting Made Brave, I got to meet him and I said, what do you do? And he's like, well, I'm just finished studying business. And I was like, oh, well, I'm just starting a branding agency. I said, how about I brand your agency? Sorry, brand your company. So I helped him brand Flavorly. He went on Dragon's Den and then he grew that business and ended up becoming one of the biggest e-commerce beer subscription businesses in the whole of the UK. I ended up starting Made Brave, and yeah, the two of us are now like the best friends, brothers. We're on the phone to each other every single day, constantly with ideas for new businesses or just like trying to help each other. And then through meeting him and my birth mum, I learned that my grandmum was a art teacher, my granddad's an architect, and so, you know, like the whole nature nurture thing, you know, I've ended up meeting all these people, realizing that actually, wow, that, you know, a lot of this stuff must have come from nature. But
Sure.
then I've also had the opportunity and the luck of having a mum that nurtured it when she saw it as well. So
Yeah, so you can look at your life now and see a lot of that having made it up. It's a big mixture of things.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Um, wow, incredible story, Andrew. So tell us the story about how the business did come about. Like what made you, other than the fact that you've got all of this in your blood, um,
Yeah.
what made you decide that you should be a business owner, and what gave you the confidence to go out on your own and do it?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'd never ever really thought about it. My mum that brought me up was a nurse, and I'd never heard the word entrepreneur, never been surrounded by business owners. Some kids are lucky that way, or they find themselves in those situations. I'd never been in that, and so I'd been working for Paul McStay, who was the ex-Scotland and Celtic football captain. You know, I'd studied in Glasgow doing multimedia design and production just when the internet was forming itself. So that's like, you know, when I was kind of 18, 20, I'm 43 now. And literally, it was the driver for me to start a business was I'd been working in that business for 8 years. I'd sort of learned my craft in terms of design and creativity and all that stuff. Never, as I say, thought about starting a business, but my wife became pregnant with our son, Finn, and literally it was money driven for me initially because I was like, oh my God. I think at the time I was on maybe 25, 26 grand. My wife was going to stop working. The maths just weren't adding up in terms of the amount of money. So I went, right, I'll leave. I'll just go out and try and do stuff. And so I left the job. I literally had my last wage, so it was, you know, just over £1,000 at the time. You know, Finn was a few weeks old, and I set out just to try and make money. So I did baby photography, I did wedding photography, I did the kind of graphic design stuff, and you know, and very quickly it got really busy and really stressful. You know, I think that's the reality of any first year. You're trying to do whatever you can do to generate, because you're scared, right? Or if you're in a position where I was, hand to mouth, it's kind of much scarier. But within a few months, I realized babies are a nightmare, right? Baby photography was not going to be the thing because, you know, they don't work on your schedule. I then, you know, the wedding photography, basically the design stuff started to take off, and I realized I quite enjoyed the business side. And I was quite naive, and I think the naivety actually sometimes gets you through. I couldn't read a balance sheet, I couldn't read a profit and loss, but I was just going out with all this energy. And basically, I think I went from me in the first year from me to 6 employees. I didn't borrow any money, I didn't take any investment. Obviously, my business was a service-based business, so I could do service, make money, you know, so you know, you can generate like that. And I was just trying to be clever in that sense. And then by the end of year two, I had 16 people in the team, and I still couldn't read that balance sheet or, you know, but I think when you start to get that momentum and things started to go, you know, what I find is, or what I found now is that I think sometimes you can stop yourself by paralysis by analysis. Like, you know, they need this plan and everything needs to be perfect. I
Yeah.
think sometimes if you wait to do that, it never happens, and you've just got to get your energy out into the world. And you know, I even find myself with my team now. We're too busy looking at spreadsheets and you know plans and making sure. Whereas just going to get going, and that's what I did. And yeah, I suppose that's where it all started.
And so tell us about the company now. Tell us about Made Brave and what you do and who you do it for.
Yeah, so at the beginning, we would again like we would do anything for anyone, and but slowly but surely you realize that's not probably a great strategy, and you need to sort of focus your niche, your energy, your resources around things. And I always tried to position Made Brave as brand experts. I kind of saw the world was paying more attention to brands. At one point they hadn't, and this was starting to evolve. So I sort of bet everything on being known for when people mentioned the word brand, I wanted them to think about Made Brave. And that went and went and went until, I suppose confidence in terms of the work we were doing, until now where we're really positioned is we're in a fortunate place that we get to help very large companies with big brand strategic problems or when I suppose when they're at a kind of crossroads, right? When companies need to reset a vision, to take a team on a journey, or where they're merging together or they're acquiring businesses, we help them. How do you align those business objectives to a brand strategy? And then and the really important part in that, I suppose, is taking a team on the journey. Because when you get that whole team going with you, you get like, instead of having a small marketing team, you've got a tribe of people, and
Yeah.
then that spits out into whatever they're trying to do as a business. So this year we just rebranded First Bus for the whole of the UK. And that kind of project was something, I think, 3, 4 years in building. And that's aligning loads of business operation units, thousands of people around a vision, set of shared beliefs and values, and then using creativity to bring it to life for them and for the world around them. And yeah, we now fly all over the world making campaigns for brands and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
You can't just create a new logo and a new website.
Unfortunately, not. No, if it was as easy as that, that would be the easy part. But I think that's where the where it feels like it should. That's what people try to do, and actually, that's often just a little facade. That's the part that it's important, right? It's the facade of it all, but the real part that makes it work is making sure everyone's clear behind a proposition, our values, our beliefs, our vision, where we're headed, and all of that. We kind of call it the foundations of a brand, and it's like we've all seen that visual of an iceberg. You only see the bit on the top, which is the website and the logo, etc. But it's all this stuff underneath that's
It's the
creating
identity
vision and
and
belief.
the
Yeah, absolutely.
people, and then it's the messaging and all of, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and it's built on belief. A lot of it's built on belief. It's like I mirror it a lot to religion, and in a respectful way. In terms of like if you think about religion, it's kind of a lot of it is about building a shared belief. You've got a symbol, right? If you think about Christianity for a second, right? You've got a symbol, you've got a cross, you've got a founder, you've got a leader, who's the face of the brand. You've then got these kind of commandments and
yeah.
the things that you believe in, and then all of that comes together. When we're building brands, we're actually trying to attract and repel people because we can't get not everyone believes in the same thing. So you're using it as a vehicle to tell the world what you believe and build that around a tribe of people that hopefully solve a problem at the same time.
So tell us a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur, Andrew. What have been some of your biggest learnings over the years?
Yeah, I think when things aren't going well, or haven't gone well, or during that journey, because I think it's important to talk about. I think when we go on LinkedIn, we often see the front end only of all these businesses, and everyone's smiling and waving and pretending that everything's going fine. And we know it's not the case, but it doesn't often get talked about enough. And I always like to share that it's not that front end you always see. It's not always what's on the website, what's on the social. And I think it's important to mention that to especially younger people, because I think sometimes you see this kind of entrepreneurial culture of Lambos and money, and that might be a part of it for a select few, but there's a reality a lot of the time, and I think when you're you know running a business isn't for everyone. I think is one of the messages. Is it's also okay if you want to be a freelancer. It's also okay if you want to have a job. Everyone's makeup, their anxiety levels, their commitments and their balance in life is different. And I think that's an important message to share that I don't think probably gets shared enough. But also, I don't want to mean to put people off running a business, because often a lot of what I see is that some people just give up a little bit too early. Sometimes success is just around the corner or it's just a little bit higher than they looked. And I think one thing I've learned, having now been in business for 13 years, is it's the ones that get out their bed and keep standing up and keep moving forward and being consistent, but not being consistent for the sake of it, also iterating on the consistency and keeping making sure you're moving forward that, tend to make it if that's such a thing.
Yeah. On the other hand, though, it's knowing when to quit. Am I
Exactly, yeah.
am I going down the wrong path?
Yeah, true. Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah. Sometimes like people are too consistent on the one thing, not realizing, wait a minute, I should maybe change something. And yeah,
Absolutely.
it's the definition of insanity, isn't it? Doing the same things and hoping
Indeed.
something different happens. Yeah.
What would you say has been your biggest challenge during the years, and how did you push through it, or did you have people to help you get through it?
I think there's constant challenges and I think some of the emotional stuff's pretty hard, right? I think when you have to lead a business and you're a founder of a business, there's a lot of chat again around the freedom that can bring, and it does, and it can bring a lot of freedom in your life, but also, you also build a thing around you that you're committed to as well, and I think, it can be a lonely journey, and it's often so it's finding support, and I think that's really important. Is no matter what situation you're in, whether it's a coach, someone that can hear and help and listen, or for me, it's often been trying to find sort of peer to peer, and every time things feel too heavy, if you can kind of open up and talk to people, sometimes that load just gets a little bit lighter. And usually, and that's, I suppose, the advantage of what you do as a service as well in terms of a coach for people, is sometimes you can see the spaces in between things that it's very difficult to see when you're in, this constant, movement of business. And businesses are tough, right? There's a constant need for money, there's a constant need for, energy and resource. And yeah, I think it's good to try to find your tribe, a person, peer, or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, don't try and do it on your own.
No, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I find a lot of my clients, when they're talking to me about a problem, they'll often solve it in their own mind while they're talking about it before I
Hmm,
even say
yeah.
it. They'll thank me, but but sometimes you just need to externalize it to somebody that's not emotionally connected to the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you need that moment of clarity and space to get it out. And I was talking to someone about it the other day. It's sometimes like the Green Mile. I say it's like, in the Green Mile where all the flies come out. You need a safe space where you can get the flies out, and then, someone can then help go, right, here's where the problem lies within it.
And a business owner told me the other day, because I asked him about that, like, who do you have to talk to about this kind of stuff? And he said, I talked to my wife, but she doesn't understand, and she's trying to give me advice and solve my problem. And she's like, I know you, and I know what you like. And sometimes we need to tell somebody that's not going to be, an emotional,
Yeah.
that doesn't, is not necessarily trying to fix you, but just needs to, bounce it back to you.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even fair to share. I'm thinking about my relationship with my wife as well, because it's like, it feels almost frustrating for both parties because they don't have enough context to actually help. You're also putting something on them that it's almost an impossible task unless you've had sort of similar experiences as well. So I think you need these different relationships, and you need to keep certain spaces safe for different things. And yeah, again, it's why coaching, it's why peer support, all these things are really important, and just to find a support network. And I think some people just try and do too much on their own. And, you know, I've always found, the more you can kind of open up, vulnerability is and that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned through leadership and running a company is, I think when most people start out, or when I did, you feel like you know more than you do. And the more I've learned now is the more I learn, the more I know I don't know. And it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, I don't know how to do this bit. It's
Yeah.
okay to say I got that bit wrong. It's okay to say, can you help me? We're just human beings.
Yeah, be human, right? Show that you're human. Your team will relate to you more, right? I guess
Absolutely.
if they see
Absolutely.
that you're human. So what's the next big thing for you in your business, Andrew? What do the next couple of years look like for you in terms of opportunity and and
Yeah, well, we've just moved into an amazing place in Glasgow called the Social Hub. I don't know if you've come across it, but it's kind of a it's like a blended hospitality space where it's kind of offices and startup companies and different businesses. It's a hotel. It's also like student halls. It's like auditoriums, bars, and everything. So a real mix of energy. So I'm loving being in there. That's kind of giving me that kind of creative collisions that can kind of happen. Really wonderful place. We've just won a new client, so we've got some exciting work coming up that we're still to do. So we've still got to go through all that doing it, but that's happening. And yeah, I suppose I'm just yeah, kind of just working through where we are at the moment. And yeah, so who knows what comes quite next? Is always a yeah, always a surprise.
well, well, I'll be watching this space. I can't wait to see you find out what happens next.
Exactly.
Um, what advice would you have for business owners, Andrew, who, you're, what did you say, 13 years in?
13, yeah.
What advice would you have for business owners that are just starting out on their own or who are on the verge of making that decision as to whether or not they want to go out on their own?
Yeah, I think whatever you're doing, selling product or service, you got to get that bit to be world class, no matter what it is. So if it's, a service offering or, coaching or, what I do, that's a given. That's got to be the given. And then I think is really important and especially important now as we come into a world where we're going to have more AI content and slop and mediocre stuff appearing, is you need to get very good at telling stories, very good at creating an emotional bond with your business, growing a brand. So I'd say spend the time thinking about that stuff and find separation. So if you're going to be leading a business, that you can't be in doing every part of it. You need to get good at delegation. It's not always easy at first, but finding that separation to grow a brand rather than be in doing everything. But yeah, it's possible if I can do it, and I've done it for 13 years. It's possible. So if you're listening and let this be the catalyst to let you go do it and believe that you can. It's possible. The world's malleable, and you can achieve
Yeah.
whatever you can if you put your mind to it.
But the recurring message I'm getting out of today, Andrew, is to not do it on your own. Surround yourself with a strong team, the peer groups, the people that you can lean on for help.
Absolutely.
Um, and then learn how to lead those people. And most business owners go into business knowing their craft. Like you
Yes.
said, like you knew design, you knew that,
Yeah.
but don't necessarily have the skills to be a leader. So, but you can get those skills, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Learn
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. You've got to learn them, and don't be afraid to be the stupid one in a room. Just ask the question. What did that mean? What was that acronym? What do you mean when you say that? And as soon as you've asked it, you learn it, and then you move on. But a lot of people feel they need to pretend they know it all, but I don't think you do. I definitely don't.
Well, lots of learnings out of today, some reminders as well, and a really interesting story and a fantastic business. Been watching you over the years, and I'm always amazed. So just congratulations, and you know
Thanks, Andy.
thank you for coming on the Founders Chair to share your story. Really
And it's
appreciate
been nice to see you. Nice to see that you're aging backwards. You're like Benjamin Button, getting younger and younger while the rest of us age.
it. I don't, the Zoom takes off 10 years. I'm sure it's just the
Need
Zoom.
whatever filter you've turned on. That's what I need.
Look, Andrew, thanks so much for being on the show today. It was really great to catch up with you. And thanks also to all of our viewers. As always, keep an eye out for more Founders Chair interviews on the YouTube channel and LinkedIn coming up soon. But just to say thanks once again to Andrew Dobby from Madebrave. Andrew, thanks very much.
I'm Andy.